Hello and welcome to today's Barb Briefing for Brands. I'm Caroline Baxter, COO of Barb, and it's great that so many businesses from around our industry have signed up to join us at today's briefing. For those of you who are relatively new to Barb, we are the UK industry standard for understanding what people watch. Every day we deliver audience data that helps people across our industry fulfil three very important purposes. Firstly, our data are used by regulators to support the ongoing conversation with broadcasters and advertisers about how they are fulfilling their responsibilities to society. And then, for decisions about which programmes to commission, produce or acquire, our data provides accountability for those investment choices. Getting our viewing figures right is a big responsibility when you consider £8 billion is spent each year on the content that people watched on TV sets and other devices across the country. And, last but not least, our data supports the £5 billion that is invested each year by brand owners on advertising. And this is the focus for today's briefing. We are all consumers of goods and services, and we're all influenced by so many things when we make day-to-day decisions about which brands to put our trust in. Advertising is a vital influence, and Barb has a long track record of working with buyers and sellers of advertising to help them understand their investment in TV advertising, which is widely regarded as probably the most effective form of advertising. Yet life continues to get more complicated, and there are more options than ever for brand owners to talk to new and existing customers. This makes it more challenging for buyers and sellers to identify business outcomes. How do we understand brand effects alongside performance objectives? How do we understand short and long-term effects? And how do we understand which media are most effective at helping brand owners find new customers? To help us navigate these questions, we're joined this morning by a leading brand owner, media agencies, and effectiveness experts. They will be in conversation guided by Justin Gibbons of Work Research. Then, we will hear from thought leaders in the assessment of business outcomes. Peter Field, one of the preeminent thinkers in this space, Dr. Grace Kite, founder of Magic Numbers, Richard Kirk of EssenceMediacom, and John Waite of Havas Media Group. And then finally, we will look at how international standards in audience measurement can help us here in the UK. Emma Moorhead of Wavemaker will be in conversation with George Ivie, CEO of the US Media Rating Council, and Justin Sampson, Chief Executive of Barb. So first up, I'll hand over to Justin, who's leading our panel discussion.
Thank you, Caroline. We're now going to focus on the new world of AV, which has become increasingly complex in the past few years. And we're going to do this with the help from a panel of experts. So I'd like to ask you all just to introduce yourselves, please.
Hi there, I'm Nicola Westwood and I'm Head of AV Planning at
I'm Gayle Noah, I'm the Media Director at L'Oreal.
I'm Vicky Fox, I'm Chief Planning Officer at OMG UK.
AV has become more and more complex. We've now got a kind of acronym soup and there seems to be a new one every few weeks. But I'm really interested in your perspectives of how you see this new landscape and kind of how you're thinking about it. Nikki, what are you seeing?
And my team know how much I hate an acronym as well, but we really tried to simplify it and we talk in one AV. So essentially we have a number of principles which help us to select the AV channels that we're going to use on our AV plans. And the first of these principles, and sort of the non-negotiable that we see it, is that it's fit for TV or broadcast quality content. And then we have a number of others which we can sort of select from to help navigate this huge choice and plethora of AV channels. So the majority of it, which will be viewed on a big screen, which the majority of broadcast content does now tend to be viewed on a big screen. It has a lighter ad load that we run in non-skippable environments. So that's our one AV proposition to help simplify and help navigate and select the AV channels that we will use in our AV plans.
And how does that fit with the client's view on this? How do you see it?
I think it's become really complex for marketeers. They've got a lot of different platforms to try and get their heads around. And so what we've tried to do is simplify it as well. So we've created a definition within L'Oreal called digital TV. And within that, again, it's very much about TV-like content in unskippable environments. And it needs to be regardless of delivery platform and also device. So whether you're watching ITVX or on Netflix, if you're watching it on a mobile, it still counts. The only exception to that is YouTube, where actually in the UK, you've got about half of the impressions are going on a connected TV device. So actually, we count that side of it as digital TV as well.
Vicky, what's the view?
I mean, it's interesting, we talked about acronym soup, and not everyone is even keeping to the same acronyms, and the way you think about channels isn't always consistent. So that, and then you get channels changing their acronyms. So, SVOD moving into an AVOD space, subsets like BVOD is a subset of AVOD, and whether or not we count video sharing as an AVOD platform or as a social platform. So language and definitions are really important to help guide us. So, and absolutely right, to help simplify that, I sort of lay it out for clients from a broadcast linear space all the way through to social video, and pull apart the device, because the device is important, absolutely what you said, and where that viewing happens, because that helps shape the plan for the client, really.
Which makes me think, is consistency and kind of comparability a thing then? Is it something you think about? Is it possible? Or is it all just too different now?
Great question. I think you have to understand what you're working with, and that's with the definitions, because the complexity lies with, impression is not an impact, they are different. An impression is also not a view, and that's a different language. And it's okay to put a plan together that has apples and pears, but you have to understand what the role of each of them is, because historically we've been charged media planners having to put a plan together that has television, radio and out of home, and they don't all mean the same, and they're not the same. It doesn't mean we don't think about the total holistic reach and frequency of that delivery. And I think the same thing, we have to think about those tactics when we put a plan together that's across AV, or we've sort of described it as unified video, which does include kind of maybe a bit more stretchy definition of AV. Just because they're not apples and apples doesn't mean they don't sit on the same plan. It's understanding the role for each of them within that plan. So
it's kind of, it's one AV, but it's also lots of AVs, isn't it, in there?
Yeah, and AV is now evolving, and it's not, I think AV used to do a very defined job of driving reach and awareness and did a very good job, and then digital maybe did more of a performance or a conversion job, but actually those two worlds are really coming together a lot more now, and it's harder to compare and sort of work on a level playing field. The broadcasters are really looking at how what they do a great job of reach and awareness actually delivers in conversions, and how that can be measured. So the traditional AV and the sort of digital AV worlds are really colliding.
They are to a degree, but I wouldn't include TikTok in that. I wouldn't include Meta in that. So I think it's very much about that TV-like consumption. And I think, again, we also start to look at attention metrics. We start to look at the quality of the view and the length of the view and the viewability. So I think when we start to bring all of those things in together, I wouldn't have some of those social sharing video platforms in there either. But
even in this brief discussion, we've been layering in different metrics in there. We've got reach and frequency, but we're looking at attention, we're looking at quality, we're looking at becoming a much more multi-layered thing.
I think for an advertiser, I think this is one of the reasons we are really vocal about Origin, is to get that total reach and frequency measurement across all of the different platforms so that we can make informed choices. But it is just one metric. So we will also look at the performance, the return on investment. We will look at even sustainability impact. So we will look at all of these different things before we make our business choices and where we invest.
Vicky, what are you thinking about in terms of metrics then? Have you got a way of looking at it that boils it down a bit? Boiling down is probably oversimplifying it. I think it's understanding the creative, it's understanding the task and the role, and making sure that everything you do is fit for purpose and fit for that environment. We're going to see a sort of a flip where it's a generational change. If you look at viewing from 10-year age gaps all the way through. The older age demographic, they will lead with a linear, and you have to sort of build a plan that reflects that. The younger age groups, their lead channel and their reach building channels are more social. So you have to make sure that campaign delivers for that. It's making and building campaigns that are fit for the audiences. And it's really interesting you touched on attention. We've just released our attention panel. So we didn't do a study, we actually built a whole panel in the UK, and we're watching them watching television, which is really exciting, seeing people watch television in the wild and understanding
their relationship with adverts, with content. And it's really going to help us make some of those informed choices about second links and when and where to place certain second links and how to get the most out of your AV investment. So exciting things happening. But it is just another metric. There is no one metric. And we look at lots of different complementary sets of data. I think that's important.
Sounds like planning AV has got a load more complicated than it used to be.
Certainly has.
What are you thinking about as kind of planners as you're getting your campaigns ready?
Well, I think the first thing to notice is the fact that you've got a couple of planning people on the sofas today, and that wasn't a role that necessarily existed a few years ago. It was sort of bundled together. You're a planner buyer, and you just had. But to help navigate that complexity, agencies have had to structure themselves, and invest in the kind of talent that can focus in on the planning challenges, because there are so many and it is so complex, and dealing with lots of different data sets, it's like a tapestry of understanding of audiences, and you're bringing together panel data with ad server data and trying to make sense of that. And one size won't fit all, but it is to the skill of the planner to help the clients navigate and make those right decisions, but we're supported by MMM and sort of robust ongoing measurement as well.
It sounds like planning of AV has got a lot more complicated. Nicola, what are some of the new skills, new challenges your team are bringing to this?
We're using our proprietary tools to help support in helping how we get these, how we make these decisions. And that's all underpinned by data, the likes of the Barb data, which we can directly upload into our planning tools to help show, which will where can we maximise reach and how can we do that most cost effectively. But of course, the proprietary tools that we work with, they're only as good as the people that are using it. So we have to bring our expertise. We have to really understand the data. We have to get under the skin of it, because we can't just take it at face value. We have to understand the plan that our tool is recommending. Is that deliverable? Does that truly reflect the audience that are going to be watching, and will it deliver what we need it to deliver against the KPI for the client?
I think there's an interesting challenge for agencies coming, especially as the landscape gets more complex. The divide between the skill set of a TV buyer versus what goes through a DSP. For example, now with Amazon Prime, Netflix is coming, you've got even YouTube, and it used to be in a programmatic team. So actually, how do those lines blur? How do you upskill TV buyers, old TV buyers, for the future, and how to bring it all together? I think that is going to be a challenge for the agencies.
In terms of measurement then, in media we do lots of things. We do the planning of the campaign, we execute it, but we also then get to the reporting, the measurement, the really understanding the kind of effectiveness. What are some of the new challenges you've kind of met there, do you think, in terms of understanding the effect these campaigns have had?
I think we've all kind of touched on the fact that you're dealing with metrics that don't align. So it's bringing those all into one place, and everybody, around the industry sort of got the methodologies for understanding that. But for us, it's absolutely having that laser focus on the outcomes, because metrics are media metrics, and they're set for a reason. But you have to think about what is the outcome of the campaign. How do my audience feel? What are they going to do? And so you have to sort of keep that aligned into your plan, because the metrics are only as good as kind of the outcomes that you can drive with them.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's very different uses of TV and digital TV, depending on what you're trying to do. What's the job to be done? So I think, again, we're focused on business outcomes. So I'll have a very different approach for, let's call it a mascara versus a fragrance at Christmas. So there'll be very different jobs to be done. And I think, again, it's how do we give the right results and the right reach and frequency numbers to the brand teams, to the planners, so that they can make the right decisions.
And one of the greatest challenges is there isn't one unified solution to bring this all together so that we can accurately measure deduplicated reach and frequency. Obviously, we have Barb data powering C-Flight, which is linear TV, and BVOD, which is fabulous because it's still a huge chunk of the AV plans that we're running. But, you have Project Origin, which will be linear TV and Meta and YouTube, but from a different data source. You also have XMR data, which is reading, data from the TV set, which is quite bespoke to the companies which are sharing it. So there isn't one solution which accurately and holistically measures the whole ecosystem of AV that, we're working in.
And with that future hat on, What's on your agenda at the moment? What are some of the top things rising in your inbox in terms of managing this future of AV?
If I had a wish list,
Yeah, go on. What's your wish list?
top of my wish list for Christmas is BVOD measurement. I'd love to measure BVOD to the same level that we measure linear, and I'd love to measure ads to the same level that we measure programs. That would be on the dream, because we've got some skilled AV professionals in the room. The granularity of what you can do with a linear schedule and understanding the nuance of how people move across programs, which breaks even in the show perform better depending what's on the beeb, or all of that nuance of how the British public love television and get involved. We just don't get with BVOD, and that would be the one thing that I'd love to see.
Aside from fragrance and mascara, what's on your Christmas
I agree.
list?
I think it's the detailed level of reporting that we can get and the analysis we can get on programme access, what people are watching, what is working, where the affinities are on everything other than linear. So not just BVOD, but also the SVOD side of things, and certainly the ad tier side of those. That would be really incredible for us.
Nicola?
Increased transparency of data and scale of these SVOD players, and being able to prove that it works, being able to prove who saw our ad and how many times.
And one last question then, if you were putting yourself into Barb's shoes and thinking about, Barb's agenda looking ahead, what would you be putting on the top of that wish list?
So I don't believe that there should be a separate measurement. I would love to see everything in one place and allow advertisers to make the call on what is a view. So what is a view for me is going to be very different to a direct response advertiser, but let us make the decision. We understand the market enough. We understand what is right for our audience. So I would love all of the measurement in one place.
Other thoughts? If you were setting Barb's agenda, what would you be putting on there?
I've been encouraged by the recent developments with the SVOD and making sure that we hold some of that measurement to the same standard. But I'd like us to see and go further with that.
Yeah, so it's great that we have Netflix, Amazon Prime Video. They're in our planning tools now. So it'd be wonderful if the next step was that these were part of C-Flight as well, so that we could measure all of that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for all of your input. Really, really appreciate your time today, and thank you for taking part in this. What we're going to do next is dig a bit deeper into the role of audience data in the assessment of business outcomes, and to do that we've interviewed some of the leading effectiveness experts.
Hi, I'm Grace Kite. I'm the founder of Magic Numbers and Magic Works, and together we sell practical training and people-friendly analytics to help marketing people get growth. Many people get analytics, feel a bit overwhelmed by it, and sometimes end up feeling stupid because they've got people saying all these 5-syllable words and all these very clever concepts and things, and they just want to know how to do their marketing better. And we really like to do that rather than bamboozle anyone. The thing I would say is that actually as an analyst, we're in a much better position where we were than when I first started. So I actually do remember getting data on dot matrix printers with the little holes along the side and then typing it into Excel version 1.0. That's my kind of early years. And, nowadays we're plugged into APIs and we're kind of passing data through pipes and being able to analyse it directly. And that's brilliant because, first of all, you get more data, you get better data, there's less chances of things going wrong and things being manually typed in wrong. So in many ways, we're in the abundance of data that we have now is brilliant for people like me.
It's getting very complex. The world of, media measurement is inevitably getting more complicated. So the needs for more subtle and more rigorous data, I think, are growing all the time. It's a really, really important time to get this right. What drives effectiveness, and this has not changed at all, if anything, it's getting stronger in the modern cluttered world. We know it's what Ehrenberg Bass referred to as mental availability. I would really refer to as the strength of our brand. The extent to which our brand, comes to mind when we are buying that category. So we know that's what drives it. We know that brands are more than simple awareness. Simple awareness will serve you well as a startup or a very small brand. But as your brand grows and builds, we also need to build out what it stands for. You know, we're not just known, but we're kind of known for something that makes us desirable in the category. So not only does that mean that as brands grow, the role of mental availability grows with it, but also the complexity of the brand grows with it. And the more we need to build that brand, the more dimensions, the more subtlety that we need to build in that brand, then the more we will need high attention media.
Audience measurement and effectiveness are so intrinsically linked these days. So you have to have delivered an ad to someone. I think that gets forgotten about in the digital space. Like the linking is I find it hard to get to. You know, a lot of what we do is buying media and getting it in front of people. That is inherently linked to effectiveness. Like you have to do that for something to be effective. But a big portion of where we invest in media doesn't really care about the audience delivery part. So, but they are connected, like intrinsically, and we have to figure out what that link looks like. There's almost an overcorrection to what I do as a job, that I'm expected to deliver outcomes, results. Actually, as a good media buyer, I should be buying you ads, right place, right time, you know, right person, and making sure that's in the best possible environments. There's an over-focus on the outcomes element.
Ultimately, like reach and frequency is a must-have, right? Because, you know, if you think about the 95-5 rule holds true in most categories, which is, you know, 95% of the people who are going to see the advertising are not ready to buy right now. Maybe 5% are. But the way advertising works is it builds associations between your brand and either moments or need states or positive thoughts about, you know, for instance, like a supermarket want to be associated with quality and value. You know, it builds those things so that the next time the person is in market wanting to buy, they're more likely to place the advertiser brand higher in their consideration set, dependent upon obviously physical availability of the brand. I guess the reach and frequency is really important because it's the thing that helps us understand how the campaign is getting into those people who aren't going to immediately respond, which is 95% of the audience, what is the 95-5 rule. And really, there's nothing else that can replace that. So if you don't have those two things, it's very difficult to make lots of informed decisions about what to do. And the problem is that if you are not careful, and this does happen in every campaign in the current landscape, is because cross-channel frequency is very difficult to understand, and cross-channel reach is not necessarily particularly accurate, particularly when you're doing sort of digital activation through ID graphs. You can end up delivering a lot of your messaging into a small part of the audience at a very high frequency level, and that drags down effectiveness.
I think the reach or frequency bit is more important than ever. And we published some work just a couple of weeks ago with Lumen and Brand Metrics that showed the importance of frequency in digital planning, for example. So to actually drive reach in digital display, you need frequency. Seems counterintuitive, but if you serve just one impression, there's a high likelihood that nobody's actually seen that impression. You haven't reached anyone. And it actually takes to up to beyond serving three impressions to drive what you class as reach. Someone having looked at it, someone actually having seen the ad once, and that's after 3 impressions. Because when you have to compare cost, you can't compare a CPM of a digital display ad to a TV ad based on that same basis, because you've actually had to buy 3 or 4 to get to have reached one person where you bought 1 to reach one person there. So to make it comparable, that's really, really important, super important.
You know, everybody knows that not all reach is equal in media, and there's a reason why we say the media is the message. And so trying to adjust for quality reach is really important as well. I think when we talk about reach, it's important that we talk about a baseline for what we consider to be actual reach. So, you know, just because the ad has been served through an ad server doesn't necessarily mean that that reached a human. We want to see, I mean, I personally believe that there is no point looking at how many impressions a campaign delivered that weren't up to some sort of basic standard. It is hard, like, and as the media landscape kind of expands, keeping having a really, really accurate POV on reach and frequency becomes difficult. And so one of the big battles is what technology and arrangements can be put in place for you to be able to better estimate those numbers and better overcome some of the more obvious technical barriers to accuracy.
There is a thing that because of Barb and Radar and the others, you can pull competitor data. So you're working for this client and you can then pull competitor data on what competitors have done. And in the digital space, you really can't do that. And that's actually quite a problem in terms of what we're trying to do for our clients, because, in a world where it was always TV first, Barb's brilliant, right? So you can run what our clients have done, you can run what competitors have done, you can put them both into the model and see how the two things are working against each other. But in a world where TV is a little more diminished and 50% of the budget is going to Google and Facebook, I can see what my client has done on Google or Facebook, but I can't see what their competitors have done. And that makes getting to good models more difficult. I mean, it's such a powerful thing, share of voice, isn't it? It actually, really does. It is really predictive and it does work in data. And if you do buy excess share of voice, you do get growth. And that's a rule in marketing in a world where everything's very uncertain, something that you can actually cling to as someone planning to grow a business. And actually not being able to plug part of the ecosystem into it it's a problem. It's a loss to us all.
So we've heard from 4 leading effectiveness experts talking about the expectations for measurement and being able to accurately assess business outcomes. We've learned about the need for MMM and other techniques to have reliable campaign exposure metrics. And what's clear is that we need to have comparable data to understand the incremental contribution of different media channels and platforms to delivering business outcomes. Alongside this is a more general observation of the importance of the role of international players. Any solution that we adopt here in the UK can't be created in isolation of what's going on elsewhere, particularly in the US. So I'm really excited to be joined by George Ivie, CEO and Executive Director at the MRC, and Justin Sampson, Barb CEO. There is clearly a lot of benefit to learning from the MRC and seeing how we can import its cross-media thinking into the UK. So George, I'm going to start by asking you, how did the MRC come into being and how have your responsibilities evolved over time?
Thank you, Emma. Thanks for having me. The MRC has been around since the early 1960s, and we were formed at the request of the U.S. Congress. Back at that time, there were some weird turns of events in the media business. Probably the most notable one was a quiz show scandal, where there were media enterprises rigging the results of quiz shows to perpetuate contestants on the shows. They would win a lot of money, it would attract a lot of audience, and therefore enhanced audience estimates and the ability to charge more for advertising. Those rigged quiz shows were leaked in a very ugly public manner, and it got the attention of the U.S. Congress, who quite simply asked, why would somebody do that? And they conducted a hearing around audience measurement ratings at the time. Keep in mind, this was in the early 60s. And they found that there was very little, if any, transparency or knowledge about how ratings were produced. There was a 6-year-long set of hearings conducted by the U.S. Congress about this industry, really. And at the end of that process, they decided there should be some regulation over how media is measured. And they decided not to regulate it themselves, that the government really wasn't well equipped As a result, they asked the industry to self-regulate. And the U.S. media industry got together, buyers and sellers, and they formed our organization. And back then, we were called the Broadcast Rating Council. We audited and set standards for measurement of television and radio broadcast measurement. And we've evolved. Now we do that function over all different media types, inclusive of digital, print, out-of-home, etc.
That's really interesting. So, Justin, why do you think it's appropriate for Barb to now get involved with the MRC, and how is it relevant to what we're doing over here in the UK?
So we've been aware of the role of the MRC and the great work that George and the team have been doing for many years, and there's actually a lot of shared genetic material between Barb and the MRC. We're both committed to best practice in audience measurement. We both advocate for a shared language across the industry. We both believe in the importance of transparency on how data is collected and compiled. The main difference between us and the MRC is that we have executional responsibility. So we specify services that the industry wants. We go about commissioning the right research agencies and data businesses to help us deliver those, and we deliver solutions and monitor that they're to the standards that are expected. And to the point you made in the introduction, we can't escape this international backdrop of brand owners, of how brand owners, I should say, many of whom are global businesses themselves, get the cross-media measurement that they want and they deserve. And we, as Barb, we've made some pretty good progress in getting international players into our audience measurement. And nowhere else in the world are pure play streamers such as Amazon, Netflix, Disney getting on board with joint industry campaign reporting systems. But we've also committed to working with other big online platforms, whether that be directly in a relationship with Barb or through ISBAR's Project Origin initiative. And in that context, we have always recognized as Barb the importance of getting alignment on metrics. And again, to what you said in your introduction, Emma, that importance of comparability across all the different players in the market. And we kept an eye, I think George might talk about this in a moment, sort of across the last half of the last decade, there was a big process in the US to develop what are known as the MRC cross-media standards. And we think that they're very relevant to the work we need to do here in the UK. So earlier this year, we made a decision to become members of the MRC, which was kind of committing even more to the work that they do and to see how we can bring it to be of benefit to everybody here in the UK.
So, George, how did you actually go about developing the cross-media standard for video, and what are the sort of headline requirements for it?
We have a history of writing standards dating back many, many years, and we have a process in place that's accepted by the industry to do that. The very first foundational aspect of it is that it's very inclusive. So when we wrote the cross-media standards, there were over 200 companies involved in the committee that wrote that set of standards, buyers and sellers and trade associations of all kinds. You don't have to be a member of the MRC to participate in that. Anybody can be a member of a standards working group. So we gather together large groups of people who have different points of view. One common aspect is many have extensive expertise in measurement. They're researchers and measurement people. And basically, we start a process where the MRC staff creates what they believe. When we're independent, the MRC staff doesn't work for any media buyer or seller. We only exist to oversee our audit and accreditation process and oversee the standards writing process neutrally. So we start the process by creating a table of contents and what we believe the document should contain. And we start writing section by section, and it's vetted by this large group of people. Is it complete? Does it have all the right requirements in it? We might have to do research from time to time, empirical research on how things work. before we set a standard. Do they work like we think they work in the measurement area? And so we went through this process, and that process takes a couple of years to create a document with that kind of powerful group and trying to reach a consensus. So it was a very lengthy and arduous process to work and get consensus among this diverse group of participants. Some of the high-level requirements. So first of all, we're trying to accurately measure unique reach across video. This standard is focused on video, cross-media video audience measurement. And to your opening remarks, Emma, the standard itself sets a foundation for industry practitioners to be able to optimize the allocation and deliver the efficiency of their media spend. And it creates an input for enhanced analysis of ROI of advertising. So those are the goals. But we had to write a standard to set that foundation. Basically, the standard also talks about several other things. Like, first of all, you should measure ads as well as content. And our initial vision in writing standard was to do that on a segregated basis because they have different attributes. So the standard lays out requirements for measuring ads and content. It introduced a concept called duration weighting of an impression. So we have a viewable impression that's duration weighted over the length of the ad. So that was a new metric that we introduced in the standard, highly debated, but eventually reached a very strong consensus that was a good idea. We expanded and required viewability also as the basis of that measurement. And we realized that in the television environment, for example, there is no such thing really as a partial pixel exposure. So we wanted to change the viewability requirement to 100% of pixels, and then the other requirements. And then last, we have a lot of requirements in the standard for cleaning and the appropriate use of data sets, because when you're measuring cross-media, you're bringing in data from multiple enterprises, with multiple attributes, and you have to clean that and bring it up to a certain level of quality before it gets implemented within the cross-media system. So the standard lays out all of those requirements. So those are some of the top-level requirements.
How can Barb deal with the MRC's requirement that the standard is underpinned by second level reporting?
Well, the way we report at the moment is at a sort of a minute-by-minute level. And as you say, there's this kind of underpinning within the MRC requirements of being able to go down to second by second. And it is a process we've started, sort of helping them. There's a lot of companies in the Barb ecosystem, and we've got to move them all kind of in an orderly way towards this different way of using the data. And it's not an overnight flick of the switch. Barb data is woven into the fabric of daily life across lots and lots of nooks and crannies in our industry. And to use an analogy, let's say here in the UK, we currently only have pounds. It's a bit like going to a world where you've got pounds and pence. And so you have to bring everybody with you in terms of understanding the context of changing the basic measurement unit. So there's a challenge of getting used to the new data. We have to provide comfort that we haven't gone to a system that's more granular but less accurate. Nobody wants to be precisely wrong. We need to enable buyers and sellers to adapt to changes in trading practice that are very likely to come with the switch. And we also have to look at reconfiguring the industry infrastructure that supports buying and selling to integrate the new data. And I think it would be a missed opportunity if we didn't take this as it's essentially a once in a generation opportunity to rethink completely how we distribute data, and in particular moving away from flat file format. So what we've already started doing is we've embarked on a new data distribution strategy with a Barb own data hub at the middle. We're going to have primacy of API access, ensuring consistency of how calculation methodologies are applied. Thinking of the planet, we're trying to reduce the number of databases that are churning Barb data every day. And so we're already making progress to commission key elements of that new data distribution strategy. So we're putting the foundations in place. And so that the idea is, as we continue to talk to the industry, that we can manage the process in an orderly way. And that will be an important process to get right. Just flicking the switch could lead to a bit of chaos.
I love the journey you've taken us on, from quiz show scandals back in the 60s to the need for kind of transparency and regulation, and the endeavour for best practice is a really common feature there. We've certainly set the foundations, and understanding how duration-based metrics are really important for us to be able to understand what's working, what's not working. Thank you both for joining me today. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks so much, Emma. We hope you've enjoyed this Barb Briefing for Brands and you found something to help you today and in the days to come. If you want to learn more about the work Barb is doing to provide a trusted and reliable source of campaign exposure metrics, please do get in touch. As well as my email address, you can now see on screen contact details for Luca Bonini, our Head of Campaign Audiences. We'd love to hear from you and have the chance to discuss how our audience reporting services can help you achieve a virtuous cycle of campaign optimization. Have a great day. Thank you and goodbye.